Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Automotive Market Minute, which may or may not take just over a minute. My name is Steven Georgella.
And my name is Philip Trubetowski.
And we're going to dive right in. Here we go. So, first of all, speaking about September and going back to even August, we've been discussing some indicators in which are troubling to some dealers. But I always like to say, if there's a downturn, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, distressed assets, an opportunity to get rid of bad habits, etc. So if we do make some comments about that make you feel a bit doom and gloom, I just see it all as one big opportunity. So just keep that in mind. So first point there is about consumer sentiment. Phil's going to touch on the fact that consumer sentiment has been on a downward trend for the last 6 to 8 weeks or so, I'd say. Number two there is going to be just a quick piece here. Lead volume across all of our dealers in the month of September was down 8.22%. And number three, closing percentages in September were down 8.86%. So that's compounding. If your lead volume's down and your closing percentage is down, that's going to be compounding. And that is what the industry as a whole, doesn't mean that there were dealers that were up. We had a large chunk of dealers that were up, but dealers that were down, they got hurt. And if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, well, I sell 100 units and my lead volume's off 8.22 and then my closing percentage is off, all of a sudden you had 20 units, 15 to 20 units disappear. And so, again, it's just worth acknowledging what happened. And the last one there is sales excellence. Hold the line. And, of course, I'll close this thing up with my little message about holding the line. Phil, please grab the reins.
Looking at consumer sentiment, you can see here that consumer sentiment has been on a large downward trend. Specifically, the consumer sentiment declined 2.3% in August, another 2.1% in September, and so far in October, it is down 1.1%. This is something that we have been continuing to stay on top of. Obviously, a large number of indicators go into overall consumer sentiment, but overall, I just wanted to be aware of that, wanted y'all to be aware of that. And then looking at new and used auto loan rates, these have continued to increase. You can see last update was on October 11th. The new auto loan rate was at 9.63%. The used auto loan rate was at 13.96%, essentially 14%. These loan rates are much higher than they were 12 months ago, and that is putting a lot of compression on the U.S. consumer. So far, the U.S. consumer has proved to be overall quite resilient, and we are still seeing consumers buy vehicles in the automotive market. However, with rates where they're at, with where rates are expected to be at for the coming months, you can expect more and more and more compression to be put on that U.S. consumer, especially with where many dealers have in terms of their average used MSRP, their average MSRP rates. A lot of the market currently, I believe Jonathan Smoke just last week or the week prior mentioned that just about 50% of the entire automotive market is currently priced out and not able to buy a vehicle.
And so on that real quick, what I want to talk about is we're having a lot of discussions with dealers with franchise dealers in which have a tremendous amount of trucks, for example, trade-ins that came in that are $45,000 vehicles. What we're telling them is if your pool was this big a year ago, now your pool is 25% smaller, 30%, 40% smaller. And so as long as you're recognizing the fact that that big pie is now smaller, which means you have a smaller pool of consumers, which means you are now fighting with the same amount of dealers for less people. And so why shouldn't you have to work harder? Why shouldn't your salespeople have to be better? We have to just make sense of it. And going back to Phil's point, what's also happening now is, and I know, Phil, this will go into your next slide if you want to go to it, but what Phil's been referencing with our dealers, and we've been doing this actually since November of 2022, Mr. Dealer, you must drop your average MSRP if you want to continue to have the lead volume you had previously. Now, we saw that overall lead volume is strong over the last 6 months. This isn't, oh my gosh, doom and gloom. People are still buying cars. But for a dealer to not acknowledge that, again, there were 100 people in your market, just for example, that could buy a certain vehicle, there's now 70. And what about the fact that apprehension with credit scores above 700 to 850 is a real thing? People they're apprehensive to go and buy that vehicle. And then when you go to subprime, we're seeing subprime 17 to 22%. And so again, we have to acknowledge what is, and it's the same thing from our firm standpoint. All we're doing is we're making sure that we're educating our dealer on what is, to ensure that we're setting realistic expectations. And if we need to go and do something different or spend to hold the market share, which has not happened in a very long time, you might have to. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, and so here's a couple leading indicators. These in particular coming from Cox. You can see leads are down year over year in October on both Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book. Credit applications are down as well, and even some service trends are down as well. In our second slide, we touched on lead volume in September, in particularly being down 8.22%, and then closing percentages being down 8.86% month over month. That data is coming from the dealers that Fountain Ford is working with. And, with regards to the closing percentages, I wanted to come back here with lead volume going down and with where rates are, where they're at. Steve and I were just at dealerships all over in Dallas. We saw some of our dealers in Houston, and it seems like a lot of these dealers are seeing the same things. Yes, lead volume is starting to fall a little bit, but these dealers are seeing more and more customers come in underwater on a vehicle that they have previously purchased. They don't necessarily know, or their expectations are incorrect, and they're thinking they're going to get into a car for $700, $400, and they're $12,000 upside down. As a result, we've seen salespeople really have a difficult time trying to manage that. And ultimately, I think that's a large reason of why some of these closing percentages have fallen.
Well, and I go to what's I'll just call him Mike. We'll make it simple. I'll go to his feedback because the salespeople have no clue how to have these discussions, and he has a strong sales staff. And I'm glad you said that, because it just reminded me of the conversation we had on Wednesday night with him, because they don't know how to have these conversations. He had two different salespeople that were going to have the customer walk because of not being able to handle that conversation correctly. And then by having it, he closed both of those deals, and they were both decent deals. But he needed some creativity there. And so, Phil, if you want to go to the last one, were you done with their slide 5 there?
Yep.
Cool. So this is just the sales excellence thing. This is just a reminder, proactively bringing up the trade. People purchase emotionally, rationalize intellectually. I use it all the freaking time. It's probably getting annoying for some of our clients. But if you're sitting there and you're having a conversation with somebody on the phone and they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you yet. We have to use ways to build trust. And one of them that I've been watching with the Alan Ram group is proactively bringing up the trade, asking about if they have a trade, what the vehicle is, and then making sure that they know that there's an appraiser on site right now that is looking for vehicles just like that, specifically that model, and they're overpaying for them because of where the market is at. And 75% increase in appointment schedules with is 24, without is 24, with is 42. That's just a different choice of words. You didn't need an increase of lead volume. You didn't need an increase of salespeople. All you needed was a better choice of words. And so for everybody that watches this, I want to get as much as possible out of what we're already getting from a lead volume standpoint. And with that, all the salespeople are happier, sales managers, general manager, dealer, et cetera. So just focusing on sales excellence. I can tell you this, we're listening to tons and tons of secret shoppers. It is very easy to see which dealers are rising and which ones are not. It's very easy. All you have to do is listen to them. And for some of our dealers, I give them a tremendous amount of credit. They choose to go towards it. They listen to the audio and they're like, okay, I'm going to go train tomorrow morning. That's the point of it. And there's some of them that we've had that said, everything's fine, I don't want to listen to these anymore. It's like, okay, that's your choice. So as friction hits, this is the opportunity where if certain dealers are not doing the work with on the sales side, the ones that are going to rise much faster than when the market is good. So just my 2 cents there. Philski, anything else?
That's all we got. That's the Automotive Market Minute brought to you by Fountain Forward.
See you guys next time.